As we continue to talk about players that the Colts should pay and bring back next season, the next guy we're going to talk about here is going to be Zack Moss, a guy that has been very good for us since he got here, right? Came to us from Buffalo. You look at what he did in Buffalo. First 3 seasons, or first 2.5 seasons, he has 225 carries for 917 yards and 8 touchdowns. So his yards per carry for the Bills was at 4.1, which is solid, right? You look at year per year, his rookie year, he had 112 rushing attempts at 4.3 yards per attempt. His second season, 96 attempts, it went down to 3.6 per attempt. And then in 2022, he played 5 games with the Bills, only had 17 carries, but had an average of 5.4 yards per attempt. And then you look at what he did with Indianapolis. Once he got traded to us, he played in 8 games. He started 3. He had 76 carries for 365 yards and 1 touchdown. That's 4.8 yards per carry. And then what he's done this year with the Colts has been nothing short of great, right? Unfortunately, he had to miss week 1 due to the broken forearm that he suffered in training camp, but he came back in week 2 and went straight to work. He had 18 carries, 88 yards, and a touchdown. Against Baltimore, 30 carries, 122 yards. He also had a receiving touchdown in that game. Against the Rams, 18 carries, 70 yards. Against Tennessee, he absolutely went off. 23 carries, 165 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And then after that point, that's when JT started to be more involved in the offense. You know, the game against Jacksonville, we barely ran the ball at all. So Jonathan Taylor and Zack Moss were both in single digits in carries for that game. You know, and then they split carries for the most part against Cleveland and New Orleans. But for the most part, it's been a lot of JT over these last couple weeks. But overall, like if you look at, he had 31 games with the Bills, had 917 rushing yards. And that was on 225 rushing attempts. With the Colts, he's played in 17 games. He started 8 of them. And he has more yards with 982 with less attempts at 209. Now, he does have 2 less touchdowns, but again, that's in 14 less games. So, you know, from 8 to 6, 14 career. And what he's done with us, like he's proven that whatever the Bills are doing with running backs, they're not doing it right. He came here and was basically immediately an impact player. When he started last season, he was making things happen. When he started this season, he was making things happen. He's a tough runner. He picks up first downs. And even though he doesn't get the ball thrown at him much, he's a pretty reliable pass catcher. So, you know, I think Zack Moss is a valuable player. And I'm wondering if he's going to be too valuable for us to re-sign. Because when you start going in and looking at different running backs and what their value is, like Zack Moss isn't going to get a top flight contract, right? Jonathan Taylor got his contract at $14 million a year. Christian McCaffrey's at 16. Alvin Kamara's at 15. Derrick Henry's the next one under Jonathan Taylor at 12.5. Nick Chubb, 12.2. Aaron Jones is at 12. Right, then you get into territory where some of these guys have 1-year contracts, prove-it contracts. You know, Josh Jacobs, Tony Pollard, Saquon Barkley. But then a guy where I think Zack Moss's value will be right in the range of is going to be James Conner. There's a drop-off from Saquon to James Conner from $10 million to $7 million. James Conner, when he was 26 years old, in 2022, he signed a contract for 3 years, $21 million. And again, I think Zack Moss's value is going to be somewhere around that number, right? Because again, he's not super involved in the pass game, but he's a good runner. And just like James Conner, like he's not the most elite running back in the league in any category, but he's solid pretty much all the way around. Right, as a runner, as a pass catcher, as a blocker, the things you need him to do. He has really good vision, which is a thing that, like, he doesn't really have that breakaway speed, but we've seen him run away from guys. We've seen him break those big runs with us specifically this year. So he has the ability, has the vision to be able to see where he needs to get to be able to get those big runs. So that kind of thing is valuable, especially for guys that again, don't have that breakaway speed. So he's a valuable player, and coming into it, I think if we were able, with all the other deals we've talked about, and we're going to talk about guys that we shouldn't sign. Those conversations are coming. We've been talking about a lot of guys that we should, re-sign. And with all the contracts that we've talked about so far, we'd be down to $28 million. So I think if you can get Zack Moss for a contract that's 3 years, we'll just go 3 years, $7 million, right? That's what we're talking about here. Again, I think that's a really solid number. I could see that going up, because it's a couple years later and the salary cap goes up. So maybe that number travels up to 8 and we could, round that off and end up with 20 million cap space, right? And if you take Shaq Leonard's contract off the books, like we had talked about, that puts us right around 33 million, a little over 33 million in cap space. And I think that'd be fair, right? Miles Sanders just signed a contract, 4 years, $25.4 million, making $6.35 million a year. He's better than Miles Sanders. He should be making more money than Miles Sanders. Now, the argument that some people will have is the David Montgomery contract, which he just signed this offseason, and he is balling out for the Lions right now on a 3-year, $18 million contract, making $6 million a year and absolutely balling out. Another one of those guys, doesn't really have that breakaway speed, but he's really good in a lot of areas. So it'll be interesting to see what the Colts decide to do. Since we have Jonathan Taylor, do we try to bring Zack Moss back? Is that going to be an emphasis, trying to keep a couple backs like that? But we also have Evan Hull, who's going to come back next season. Hopefully he's able to stay healthy next season. But do they go ahead, bring back Zack Moss, or do they want to allocate that money somewhere else, since we do have Evan Hull, who, at least in the preseason and through training camp, a lot of hype around that rookie. So I'm excited to see him come back. I thought he was going to have, a nice impact with us, obviously, with having Jonathan Taylor and Zack Moss. He was going to have a limited role, very limited role. But I thought, there was an opportunity for him to come in and be able to do some things in this offense, kind of like a Taysom Hill, right? I thought we could use him in that kind of way. So even with Jonathan Taylor signed in this Shane Steichen offense, a lot of questions remain at the running back position. And we'll talk about those more as the season goes on. So make sure you're subscribed with notifications on so you get notified when different videos come out. We have videos every single day on this channel. I appreciate you stopping by to have a conversation with me. And until next time, as always, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and go Colts.